So my name is Vijay, and I retired recently as the Global Head of Insights at Unilever, retired from the corporate world. And I'm here to share with you my thoughts on the future of the insights industry. And I know that the present feels tough. It feels tough if you're at the client side. It feels tough as if, your budgets are being attacked. If you're on the agency side, it feels tough because it seems like business is difficult to come through. But I do believe that insights is not a loner. It's more a reflection of where the economy is at in general. And I do very strongly believe that the insights industry has a very bright future ahead. Yeah, we're an industry which has a really, really long history. If you go back in time, if you remove biblical references to surveys, the first known survey was done in 1930 by a publishing company called the Curtis Company, which really believed in the fact that it could sell more advertising space if it were able to create better advertising, more effective advertising. And that's why they commissioned the first known market research in 1913. Yeah, think about it. AC Nielsen was set up in 1923. That's more than 100 years back. Gallup was set up in 1935. That's almost 100 years back. Yeah, and we have a very, very strong, very deep history. But I do think that we've got a much brighter future ahead. Yeah. Now, in order to get to that brighter future, there are a few things that we need to do. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about 5 things in the next 15 odd minutes. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we are at the precipice of change. Generational shift of the kinds that I have seen only once. That's the shift that I saw when laptops came about. So when I started my career, I was at a very significant disadvantage to my peers because of something called an overhead projector. Anybody remember those? Yeah, transparencies. I have awful handwriting, and therefore my slides looked awful. My transparencies looked awful. Yeah, all of that went out of the window the moment you had laptops and the moment you had projectors coming in. Yeah, we are at the precipice of a similar kind of a generational shift. And what we need to do is to absolutely embrace new technologies as they come through. Because fundamentally, new technologies are allowing us to measure what we need to measure as opposed to measuring what we can measure. So a simple example, we've always wanted to measure and needed to measure emotions. What we have measured is asking people, what do you think, what do you feel? Yeah, it is at best a very weak proxy. Today, we have technology which allows us to genuinely measure feelings at scale at a very reasonable cost. Yeah, and that's what we need to do. Having said that, what we must do is to adopt technology, and what we must not do is to adapt to technology. Yeah, and it's a very important difference because if you think about it, 20 years ago, or maybe about 25 years ago, when the internet came about, the quant side of the industry did a wonderful job of really adapting to the fact that we now have the internet. What we did was collectively, we took the questionnaire that we used to do pen and paper and plonked it onto the world of internet. Yeah. With the benefit of hindsight, had we just sat back and said, okay, we need to collect information. In a pen and paper world, this was the best way to collect information. In a world of digital, what is the best way to collect the information? We would probably have come up with a different solution. Yeah. In the recent past, some people have tried to look at that and tried to, again, adapt to it. But we need to look at things very differently. For instance, I'll give you one example. Synthetic. And I'm sure there are half the people in this room who believe in synthetic, half the people who disbelieve in it. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that it is here to stay. But equally, the fact of the matter is that you cannot use some of the conventional tools and techniques when it comes to usage of synthetic. For instance, if you talk about synthetic samples, one problem with synthetic samples that people talk about is the fact that it violates the basics of sampling theory, which is true because it's not random samples being added, independent samples being added. While that is true, that does mean that you're adding power without necessarily adding statistical significance. And therefore, things like a t-test and an f-test are not valid. Correct. That doesn't mean that you cannot use synthetic data. All that it means is that you have to use a different set of statistical testing in order to measure whether or not the difference is statistically significant. And I use that as a simple example of the fact that what we will need to do is to change our systems, our processes, and even our benchmarks in order to genuinely adopt new technologies that are coming along. What we cannot do is to expect old ways to work for the new age tools. It will not. We have to genuinely change at the core in order to make that happen. But in order for that to happen, we have to be prepared to learn and we have to be prepared to experiment. And, I spent a significant amount of my time upskilling myself in the world of AI. And I've done several courses. And when people come and talk to me about AI, everybody has an AI. If you have a regression model, that qualifies as an AI, which is a fact. Yeah. And when people talk to me about an AI, I ask them a very simple question. What is the temperature of your model? And if people look at me with a blank face, it either means that they're selling a wrapper, or worse still, it means that they're selling vaporware. Yeah. But I know that because I have invested time in actually understanding the basics of AI. And I'm not an engineer, I'm an arts graduate. I have no reason to know it, but I have invested time. Yeah. But you have to be prepared to learn, unlearn some of the old things, learn new stuff, and also experiment. Yeah. And you have to do significant amount of experimentation as to what works for your organization, because there is no one solution yet that's going to work across. Not yet. We might get there, but you have to discover what works for you. Equally, we have to be looking at technology as the means to get to new sources of insights. Yeah, all of us in the world, people in general, are leading very busy, very stressful lives. They don't remember when was the last time they had a cup of tea. They don't remember why they had that cup of tea. You ask anybody, how long did you brush your teeth for? The answer is always 2 minutes. The reality is never more than 10 seconds for most part. Yeah. But equally, people do leave information through things like, what they're searching for. How do we tap into some of those new sources of insights to actually answer questions that we need to be answering? And technology allows us to do that. Now, you cannot get through a presentation today without talking about AI. And I think, the entire debate about should you adopt AI or not is a bit of a false debate. Again, I go back to the time when I started my career. We didn't have laptops. They used to actually be desktops. And I remember there used to be one departmental laptop at Unilever that you had to book for the weekend, and you had to book weeks in advance in order to be able to take it home. Yeah. And I remember at that point in time, there were some senior folk who would stand up and say, I don't need to learn how to use a laptop because I have a secretary who will type out my emails. Yeah, that happened. And they were not wrong, because yes, they had a secretary to type out the emails, but they missed the point of the power of using technology. We are at a similar phase when it comes to the use of AI. It's not an option. The question is, how do you use it in order to maximize yourself? Yeah. And I think human intelligence will continue to play a role. And by adopting AI, hopefully we will make ourselves actually intelligent. Yeah. While technology is going to be important, I will say technology is not the be all and end all, because I do strongly believe that the best insights have always come from understanding people as people in the cultural context in which they live. And that is something that is not going to change. Yeah, I'll give you an example. In India, the penetration of cars is about 16%. 16.4 was the last estimate. And if you ask people, why do you not buy a car? The single biggest reason is affordability. Therefore, Tata came up with a car called Tata Nano, which was priced at 100,000 Indian rupees, which at the current exchange rate is about 1,500 Sing dollars, give or take. Yeah, you would expect that it would take off like a rocket. Yeah, fact of the matter is that it didn't sell. It's a very simple reason as to why it didn't sell. It didn't take into account the cultural context of the responses. Yeah, which is in India, an entry-level car. When you buy an entry-level car, it's not just a purchase. It signifies the fact that the family has arrived in life. And therefore, when the car comes, there is an entire religious ceremony around it. There is a celebration, a party is thrown, sweets are distributed in the entire neighborhood. And everybody looks at envy saying that family has arrived in life. When will we be able to afford a car? But if you're now not buying an entry-level car, but buying a Tata Nano, people don't look up to you. They actually snigger at you saying, you couldn't afford a car, therefore you bought a Nano. And therefore nobody bought it. Yeah. And it is that cultural understanding of the response that is important today, and it will continue to remain important into the future, because at the end of the day, as an industry, we are here about understanding people. Yeah. And therefore, one of the things that, is a slight constraint for our industry is the word insights, because the first two words of that is in, and it does promote a sense of inward looking. Yeah. And, they say the word, your office is a very bad place to have a point of view around the world on, is absolutely true. And we just need to ensure that we go out into the world and actually see people and observe people, how they actually behave in the real world. That's where the best insights are going to come from. Now, the third thing that I will say is that one thing that's not going to change is the role of insights. Yeah? The role of insights is for impact. The role of research is a means to an end. It's a means to an end of insights. Insights is a means to an end. The end is growth of the business. Any insights function in any company will tell you that the reason why they exist is to drive the growth of the business. That must never change. That will not change. And therefore, yes, we spend lots of time ensuring that we get the right research methodology, which is 100% the right thing to do. But it is a means to an end. The end is insight. The end of insight is actually impact. What will change, though, is that historically, where we've spent a lot of our time on gathering data, little amount of time on knowledge, and as you go up that pyramid, very, very little time on impact. What is happening today is that the tools and technology that we have and the new age technology that we have, especially things around AI, actually allow us to invert that pyramid so that the process of collection of data becomes much quicker. Conversion of that to knowledge becomes quick, and therefore we can use our human intelligence to actually focus on the top end of it, which is around impact. Yeah, that is what is going to change. Now, one thing one new muscle that we have to add is what I would call algorithm intuition. I wanted to call it algorithm insights, but I stayed with algorithm intuition. The reason for this is because, historically we started out understanding consumers, B2C insights call it. Then retailers became big, and retailers started intermediating the choice that shoppers had. Therefore, we started to get to customer insights, or B2C, B2B insights. We're now at a phase where algorithms are starting to intermediate what people see and buy. Yeah, so in terms of content, Dentsu did a study last year and estimated that 69.8% of all media was intermediated through an AI, which means that AI is now determining what you and I see, especially true on social media. Think about the world of commerce. Yeah, historically, an SKU existed in a cluttered shelf of about 500 SKUs. That changed when e-commerce came around, and realistically it was a shelf of about 10 because nobody went down to the second page. Today, in a world of generative AI and agents, that is now a shelf of 3, because if you ask Gemini, it'll give you 3 options to buy from. Yeah. Therefore, the question is, how do we understand what drives algorithms? So you have to win the algorithm and win consumer preference. Both of those have to be true. This is going to be a very new muscle, because remember, all research has been built on understanding humans, and humans are wonderfully irrational. And therefore, the tools and techniques have been developed for that. Algorithms are coldly rational. How do you understand what is going to drive the cold rationality, but equally mix and match that with driving or gaining preference in a world of irrationality? That is the new paradigm that we need to get towards. The second new paradigm that we need to get towards is actually foresight. Yeah? And insights is for growth. Foresight is for transformation. Foresight is looking into the future and saying what is going to be coming at us. The professor just talked about the geopolitical outlook from a long-term perspective. Yeah, very simple thing. I'll give you one very simple example. The world population is declining and aging. Yeah, that is true. Yes, it is true in the Western Hemisphere, but it's also true in this part of the world. So if we take the 60+ population, Japan, yes, 36% of the population is 60+. Thailand, 20% of the population is 60 plus. Vietnam, 16% of the population is 60 plus. India, 11%. And within India, you go to some of the more prosperous states like Kerala, 19% of the population is 60 plus. The world population is aging. As the population ages, requirements from products and services are going to change. In Japan, there is a term called karieshu, which loosely translated means the smell of the grandfather. Why? Because after the age of 65, the human body starts to disintegrate and it emits a smell. There are other such things that, there are physiological changes that happen. That means that the needs are going to change. And, how do you prepare for a world of the future? And I'm taking a very small slice, And they always say that you can see the signals and the signals already exist today. It's just not widely spread. So let me show you an example of how it's already present today.
Get ready with me to go on a date with my ex. He's coming in 20 minutes and we're going on a walk. I haven't seen him in 12 years and I don't have anything else to do. I'm not putting any makeup on today. I'm just using CeraVe. I'm not trying to impress him. I've been using this stuff for years. It's probably why my skin slays. I'm hoping he's still cute and he doesn't have too many wrinkles. It has SPF 30. So I'm gonna feel safe in the sun. Now I'm gonna put this on my lips. I don't want to kiss him, but you never know. You never know. I'm a little bit nervous. Well, you should be nervous, not me. Let me show you my outfit. This is my outfit. If he doesn't like it, he could leave. I'm gonna bring it if he wants some. I'm gonna put it in my pocket. He'll be here any minute.
So if that is the world of the future, a potential world of the future, how do you start to prepare for it? And that's, just one slice of what the future will potentially hold. So, we've historically developed the muscle on insights. Foresight is a new muscle that as an industry we need to develop. So look, those are the 5 things that I do believe we need to do in order to ensure that we actually realize the full potential of the brighter future that lies ahead. Yes, technology is going to be core to all of this because of the fact that, it does afford us new and different ways of doing things that we've wanted to do but have not been able to do. But equally, let's not forget the fact that at the end of the day, we are in the business of understanding people. Let's not forget the fact that at the end of the day, insights is a means to an end. The end is growth of the business. Those will continue to remain. And yes, as we move forward, there are 2 new muscles that we need to develop. One is around algorithms. The other is around foresight. Now, I know that, different parts of the industry are indeed working on, how do you address some of these opportunities, tap into some of these opportunities. And with that, I'll pass on to Dinesh to talk about how Bolt is addressing some of this.
Thank you so much. How do you match that energy? At least I've got Bolty in the house. So Bolty, shout out, please. And, I've known Vijay for almost 17 years. He's inspired me in various different shapes and forms, from silent meetings of some humble, heartfelt moments in our long CMI meetings to some really tough lessons. So I want to take this moment to really thank Vijay, who spent, 26 years at Unilever and now retired. He's inspired a whole generation of CMI. So thank you, Vijay, for that. So now, Vijay spoke about long-term optimism. When I look at Bolt, and I'm going to talk about what we do, I can assure you the future is really bright. Just taking a step back and talking about Bolt and what does Bolt do. It's an AI-moderated platform. It's an ecosystem which lets you to get to do consumer insighting, talking to consumers in real time, develop deeper, richer insights. It's a lot more flexible tool. It's an ecosystem which drives pace at a scale which is unfathomable. It's an ecosystem, it's an intelligence system which is now being developed to really get you to answer questions on demand, not only by just going to consumers, but really harness the power of data and insight that have been generated over the years. And it is, like I said, it's a living intelligence system. And I'm going to talk about this in a little more details towards the end. But I want to go back to what Vijay really said. Vijay mentioned the biggest pillar that he mentioned is to really double down on insights for impact and getting to our consumers, getting to our people that we serve. Now, Bolt has now 100 plus researchers. They're about technologists, brand strategists, and these are the people who are really nuts about insight. You get the wordplay there, I guess. But also, for the fact is that now this tool is driving research and getting to the people we search at a pace which is 10x. Gone are the days when I, as a researcher, I remember there was a problem statement that was given to me. I would type in a brief and go to the consumer, contact the agency, and get the work done. It would probably take 5 to 10 weeks. Now the work is done over the weekend with the level of depth of insights generation that is also unimaginable. Not only that, reaching out to get to your consumers, but also getting to the decisions also is now getting at a pace which is really remarkable. We have actually a platform now that can generate insights report at that very moment when the interviews are done. But we still take a day to make sure that there is a researcher in the loop for that 5% hallucination, making sure things are rightly, and there is a strategic lens that is provided to the tool. And no wonder, with all that remarkable features and approach, we are winning accolades and various kind of, from the Green Books to Quirks to MRS already have all the badges there, and recent one is the SMR 2026. Now, let's also take a step again to really understand why Bolt and why Bolt is really driving technology at its forefront. Now, it started off as an online moderation company. So what happened? We got hundreds of researchers onto the platform. We created digital scripts of how to really talk to consumers in the best of the way. We basically digitized everything, including videos, text, and voice. And we used that became the bedrock and foundation of leveraging AI when AI came in. And in 2023, we pivoted to something called as Bolt Chat AI, which is where the whole training was done with all the digital scripts of past, hundreds of thousands of studies that we had at hand. So now today when we stand, we are at almost 15 million interviews which are done through the platform, and it is continuously training back the model. It is not only doing that, but it is also doing that with precision and the best of the moderation skills that are available in the market. So now we know how moderators do risk and conduct research in different regions, different languages, different cultures, and different lingua franca, and making sure that we get to the best of the skill sets and talk to consumer in a way what we call as a conversational AI. And now talking about the currency for us is tokens, and I think it's very important for us to understand how do we really use that. We're now generating 1 million tokens, which is almost twice to thrice the speed at which we are generating it in the past 6 months in itself. So which is remarkable again. But with great speed comes great responsibility. I think I would be a disservice to not really talk about the certifications we have in terms of privacy. We are SOC 2 Type 2 certified, and why is it important is because that builds trust, that builds credibility, that gives us the right kind of authority to go across and talk to different industry practitioners, whether it is banking to FMCG. But to be frank, I'm the biggest fan of the features. Now we can really chat with the report. Report is generated on the platform. Gone are the days when your business partner would ask, can you tell me what do people think about oily scalp? Oh, I did not do it because we were focused on dry scalp. But imagine this script has already understood without hallucination to kind of decode and structure information in such a way that you can now go back and chat to the report. Not only that, I think one of the things that really haunted us is really the fraud in research industry. And I can tell you stories, and we have a booth outside, we can talk about this. We now have a bot detection in place, which lets us identify fraud and address it there and then. The other thing is now we can use the platform to also run meta-analysis. You do qualitative research multiple times to get to let's say, a finer concept or a finer communication. But somebody comes and asks the smart question, can you give me a synthesis? And then you scramble across reports and take 3 to 5 days and spend umpteen number of hours to do this. But now on the report, you can just plug in, consolidate all the researches in one platform, and run the meta-analysis in a minute. How sweet is that? And I think smart probing is something which is also very fancy. It is the ability for us to kind of probe and ask consumer because of the enrichment that has happened in terms of moderation skills. We are now able to probe deeply and get to the deeper insights. And by using projective techniques, which sometimes maybe some moderators did not have the skill set. So there were biases also that were generated. There were fatigue that could have been generated. But these smart probes cater to and takes away all the disadvantage that we had with the traditional world. But the biggest fan I'm of is actually consumer persona. It is a platform with which you can now generate the cohorts that you want to understand, create a video of this, create a video avatar. You can share it with the creative agency to kind of figure out, if you have any brief or you want to understand a certain cohort. Now the real thing is, where is this going? We just spoke about to adapt and not to adopt. We are now already working. We're not working, but it is ready of something called as a bolt intelligence. It is your ex machina software platform on your dashboard, wherein the marketeers and the insights practitioners will be given the ammunition, if I may, to really gather signals on a click of a button and generate concepts, get them validated and structured across your different channels or whatever your strategy or different cohorts, and then to prioritize for them to now give it to the R&D to further launch. Now that's something that is available now and something that we are really driving with pride. With that, I'm towards the end of the research. I am Dinesh, and I'm the Bold Insights APAC client partner. Please meet us outside at the booth. And with that, we could take a question or two. I think we have a minute left, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lydia.